We'll turn the call over to our first presenter, Brian Burnkoff.
Thank you, Vicki, and I want to say thank you to Arrow and Micro Focus, and of course the Weber Grill Academy for helping us to put this on. I think we've got a good topic, and certainly judging by the number of folks that expressed interest, this is something that is meaningful to all of you. It's something that has been, and those of you that know me, it's been something that has been very meaningful to me and what we've been studying over the last couple of years. And having had a chance to work with Scott very recently, we've really come to understand the importance of performance engineering, how it's different from performance testing, and why this is such an important discussion to be having within our organizations. For me, what drives this home is really understanding that whereas normally as QA professionals, we have opportunities to identify defects, and in some ways, hopefully are moving towards more defect prevention, but performance engineering has direct ties to cost savings and helping the organization in much larger ways. And that's been one of the great learnings that I've had from working with Scott, and I'm really glad that he's able to put this on for us today. So we'll go through a number of things and through Scott's agenda here, understanding what performance engineering is, how it's different than testing, how to increase the use of performance engineering theories and concepts and practically, of course, in DevOps, and then what you need to take away from this webinar, from this event, hopefully some thoughts on how to build that culture internally. I know a lot of folks that are on this call I know directly through our QA interactions, but performance engineering is well beyond your traditional testing team or quality assurance team. So with that, I think a lot of you know who Scott is. We're really proud to be working with him. He's primarily a barbecue connoisseur, which ties directly to our Webo Grill, but on the side, he's also a very well-known performance engineer. So certainly glad to have Scott be part of this and working with us on this. He's if you haven't had a chance to catch some of Scott's recent work in the performance tour, I certainly suggest you check that out, as well as understanding what it means to really
looks like it's the wrong link, everybody. I just got the meeting Dave. On another link.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and so Scott is, like I said, Scott's focused on performance engineering. He's created the SEAL approach, which is a really great way of looking at performance and engineering across the life cycle. So with that, Scott, I'm pleased to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for joining, and thank you for having me here. I mean, if you do know me, then you know that if we're talking about performance testing, performance engineering concepts, and there's a grill anywhere near, I'm in. So I'm here. So let's go ahead and just get started. I mean, at a high level, it's pretty easy to see where performance brings value to an organization. And some of these names, you know these logos, and you can find a lot of this information on a site called WPO Stats. And WPO Stats.com, it demonstrates a lot of companies that have realized, hey, if we make our shopping cart 1 second less, instead of it being 5 seconds, if we can make it a 4-second transaction, we can get somewhere between 7 and 10% more conversions. That rings true to a CIO who can then talk to the CFO and put a actual dollar number around it. That has financial impact. So a lot of these companies, these are just a few samples. So sometimes it's saving money, sometimes it's actually making money, sometimes it's savings through less infrastructure that you need because you're right sizing and you're being more efficient. There's one case here that I do want to mention, though, that doesn't have to do with a shopping cart, and that's the Miami-Dade County school system. And that just happened as school started this year. The first couple of days of school were virtual, and they were completely down on their learning system. And the reason why, they first thought, well, there's a network problem. Let's call Cisco and find out what our routers are doing wrong. Then they contacted Comcast, and through a period of a couple of days, they realized what was actually happening was a student had purchased a very low-cost stress testing tool and was performing a denial of service attack on the organization, and that's what kept them down for 2 days. And for those of you who don't know, a denial of service attack is pretty much the same thing as a stress test that we do when we do that in QA. We just do that ahead of time so that you understand where the bottlenecks are going to arrive first and where your first breaking point's at. And in this case, Miami-Dade had actually done some performance testing, but they didn't have a performance engineer ready at the helm to say, you know, as you roll into production, why are we still seeing these 503 server busy errors? And a performance engineer would have keyed into that error number and said, you know, this isn't a network problem, guys. This is actually, the website is actually overloaded. So let's go ahead and let's fix that problem and find out where it's at. And they would have helped them locate it quicker. So it's easy to see what the value is. The next slide, let's just kind of go into what is performance engineering versus, we talk a lot about performance testing, and you'll see that it's a whole ecosystem here. Performance engineering starts whenever the thought of an application is in play in somebody's brain, when it transfers over to requirements, user stories, and the documentation is first created. Then that's when it all begins. So if you start there, that's the cheapest way to fix performance problems, is before a line of code is ever even written. And how you might do that is, you know, we've written something similar to this before. Here are the problems we experienced then. Let's make sure we don't recreate that. So performance engineering is more than an individual piece. Like in development, you might want to test several lines of code or a particular microservice. You might test all your APIs together. And then some organizations just wait until a major release and do some kind of integrated test where we put all the puzzle pieces together and load test that way. But it's more than one of those things. It's all of those things. And it goes beyond development and test staging, goes all the way into production, where we're production monitoring as well. And we want to feed that information from performance in production to what we did in pre-production, and make sure that, you know, we're comparing apples to apples to make sure that what users are actually doing is what we thought they were going to do, and the performance bottlenecks that emerge aren't really a surprise. Some people think that when you talk about performance engineering, that's just, you know, I want to go in and run a one user in a browser and see how it performs there, analyze the code. That's part of it. Some just want to look at logs. What are the web server logs showing, and how fast or slow is the site based on that? Well, that's part of it too. Some just want to have a check mark that says, we need to get everything going fast, so let's put all of our performance tests into a CI pipeline and make sure that every time we do a build, we're running a load test. Well, that can be good and that can be bad too, because sometimes it's lost in the shuffle and does become just a check mark. And I've been to many organizations recently where they're doing this performance testing and they have it in a CI pipeline, but they're still spending a majority of their time in war rooms with clients trying to scratch their head and figure out, why are we still seeing performance issues? I thought we were testing with every build, right? So it's much more than that. It's all of this together. And as we talk more and more in the future about moving from testing to engineering, that's going to require a different conversation than we've had in the past, with roles and responsibilities and the scope of what this engineer does, rather than just what a tester does. And that's not to minimize what a tester is, but let's go kind of into that in the next slide. We'll talk about these roles. You know, performance testing is where I began. That's where most people begin in QA. And years ago, before Agile, you had these silos where you had development in one group, and then it passed it over to QA, and then they threw it over the wall. And then as the methodology changed, then the roles began to change. Well, maybe we have a group of people, a scrum team, that's responsible for performance testing from code all the way to production deployment. And so this kind of changed the need of what the skill sets were. And the classic performance tester, who was only thinking about performance in testing, now you had to have a jack of all trades, master of none, and somebody who was expected to be able to write code, understand functionality, understand performance concepts, security concepts, and add. And the brain just can't handle everything, unfortunately. And at some point, you're going to know enough about something to either get you in trouble, or you're going to end up being the same role with every single sprint and not change around and be a developer one sprint and a performance tester the next. So I still see this performance tester role as very important because it is still a niche skill set. But moving beyond just the testing piece where, and this is what I've seen, a lot of this is just knowledge of what I've seen in the industry over the years. We have this role called a performance tester that gets input from some place. Maybe it's QA, maybe it's business analyst, and they say, this is how we're going to use the app. This is what we want you to test it, and let's get it to production. Tell us if it's going to pass or fail. Tell us where the bottlenecks are at. So they take that input, they give the output, and then another group possibly looks at that output and makes decisions based on it. Maybe we shouldn't roll out. Maybe we've got to do some tuning. Let's halt this. That's kind of how it kind of works as you develop the information from the tests, and you look at the results. Things can change. It could turn from yeah, we thought we were going to roll it out, but no, now we've got this big tuning engagement that we've got to do. When you move into engineering, and the difference mainly between an engineer and a tester is an engineer may be able to find that bottleneck or a pattern for that bottleneck before a performance test is even run. So we're not thinking about input that we get from another group and output we give to another group, and hey, this is just my job. I test and then I release. It's let's take a look at what you've got, and let me just open up this app and look at it. And just like I told you before, you might pull up that browser and analyze what's going on with a single user real time and say, I can already tell you some patterns that I'm seeing that aren't good. Let's investigate this before we ever start ramping up load. So you get in earlier, get the earlier information and raise the red flag earlier when you see that happen. But moving to that type of group may require upskilling those resources, investing in training, or bringing on new resources that can do that. Next slide will show the performance engineer. It shows the difference between the performance tester and the engineer. And whereas a performance tester might just create automated scripts, run test scenarios, there may be some tuning and there may be some output from that. Very rarely, unless you're bringing on a consultant like somebody like me, you're not going to get this report that says, here's what you need to do to actually fix this. Because most testers are having to test, they'll test an SAP module this time, they'll test a Citrix application next time, and they might test a web application in a large organization. There's no way they can know everything about a SQL Server database and a IIS web server. They have to rely on other experts, and it's a team effort to do that. Whereas a performance engineer is going to be have a lot more experience, but they're also going to play a role in every one of those aspects of the software development lifecycle. As it's in dev, they can work with developers and help them build more performant code. As it moves into testing, as it goes into operations, they're going to want to look at that monitoring information, feed that back into testing, and vice versa. And you're also going to see here that the engineer thinks about an additional cycle for this life cycle, which is called the business. As a performance engineer, I think about what does the end user see first, how are they experiencing this application, and way backwards into more of the technical information and the lower level data that we get out of tests. So engineer has a little bit different mindset than a tester in that it's not just about input output, it's about looking at everything as a whole and looking through that life cycle. And I'm going to dig into where you go with this as a official role in the organization in just a couple of slides. So let's go to the next slide. So this is really that life cycle approach, and we can see where that traditional performance tester kind of plays a little bit into the development piece, the operations segment, but spends 90% of their time in the performance or staging environment. If it's as close to production as possible, that even better. And then I've got this thing at the bottom. Okay, so this is a Scott Moore thing. I call this title the SEAL, the software engineer across the life cycle. It's not performance specific. So you could have a software engineer across the life cycle with an emphasis on performance, You could also have one a seal that's over security. It wouldn't really be a CISO, but it would be more the technical side. The difference being is that the seal can operate anywhere in this life cycle from cradle to grave, and the reason they can do that is because they have a very narrow focus across the life cycle. So I can, as I consider myself a SEAL, I can operate in any of these. I can operate the development team level. I can operate within a QA organization, DevOps, whatever it is, but I only care about the performance aspect of that application. I'm not thinking about functionality or security, the UI design, none of that. It's all about performance. So when you have that narrow, thin focus, it allows you to play at a much wider scale. I really feel like this is the future for software engineering for performance. And I think any large organization needs to have at least one SEAL, and then they can act sort of like an internal consultant to organizations, helping them, either it's mentoring, education, setting standards, whatever that is, they would do that. So that's just something that I came up with. It has taken off in some organizations, but of course I'm not as big as Google, so I can't come up with something like an SRE and it be adopted, day one. So next slide, Brian. This is just an example that shows you if you're trying to build out continuous integration and continuous deployment, you're going to need continuous performance because you're going to have continuous testing. And this is just a sample of what you might see when you build out that pipeline, various areas where you can inject performance factors. And that could start right after code commit in the unit level. It can happen during the regression. It can happen during right before you roll it out to production, and you can also have continuous performance testing in production for certain amounts of use cases. And especially in a DevOps world where you are rolling out production code, but you've decoupled your production code from the users using it. You would have feature flippers where you can have code out in production that you can test with a pilot group, just a few users, and turn it on over time. And then if you find out you've made a oopsie with performance, you can always roll that back. That's kind of a main characteristic of a DevOps culture. That allows you to do this kind of continuous performance testing in production. So this is just a reference that you can look at and say, hey, where can we actually stick performance in all the way through? What does that look like? All right, so just with a few minutes that we've had, if you go to the next, I tried to convince you that performance needs to be throughout that life cycle, and hopefully I've at least piqued your interest. So Scott, if I want to build a performance culture like Google has, for example, how would I at least start? Give me a high-level view of this. So the first thing I would do is create awareness. So the first thing you have to do is, when everybody thinks about functionality right now, and then they think about probably performance and security later on. But when there is a functional question being asked about a user story, there should be somebody asking a performance question. When a user story is created, there should be an additional requirement that has a performance metric applied to it. As a user, I want this particular functionality to do this, and when I'm doing it, it should scale to this level of concurrency. Concurrent number of users could be the end user experience for a round trip, fully rendered page should be within X number of seconds. Whatever that metric is for your organization, just start thinking about that, and from there, create that visibility by saying, okay, if we're going to say that the application is done, is it done if it still doesn't perform? Is it done if after the 46th user, it's going to begin failing under load with 503 server busy errors? So make the acceptance criteria of going forward, make sure there's performance factors involved there. And as everybody begins thinking about it and knowing that they have to meet that, not just a functional requirement, but this performance requirement, it keeps it in the conversation throughout the whole time. And then you've also got to have some level of accountability. Now, in some models, like the Spotify model, that may be individual accountability or team squad accountability. But as you move into other methods and other ways that you roll out software, It could be an organizational level. If you're rolling out SAFe, it could be that system team has that seal that has that ultimate responsibility and make sure that they go from team to team and across application to application to make sure they're educating them and that they kind of hold the standard there. So creating awareness, create visibility, and create accountability. So the next slide, I want to share with you 5 things you can do right now to start this new culture if you wanted to do it today. And this can start from wherever you're at. But the first thing is define that ownership, define that accountability. Where would performance be owned? Is it how much does each individual own of that accountability? How much does each team own? And how much does the organization that's responsible for this application? How much ownership should they have? What are they the owners of? So begin defining that at least loosely now. And then begin to start thinking of the timings as SLIs, SLOs, SLAs. SLIs are the actual timings themselves. What do we want to time? The metric, the service level indicator. The SLO is a service level objective. What is it that we want to reach? How slow is too slow? And that could be different for every organization, could be individual to each app. If you're looking for a standard, I've mentioned Google a few times. Google has rolled out something called the RAIL system, R-A-I-L. You can look it up, Google RAIL, it'll tell you all about it. But here's the gist of it. Every fully rendered web page should come back within 5 seconds. And every service, individual API call or service, should be somewhere around 100 milliseconds to 200 milliseconds. There's always exceptions, but you can start with something like that and say, we're going to tweak this for our organization. An SLA, a service level agreement, would be something more formal where you've kind of signed off between vendors or between parties that says, if we don't meet this, there's either a penalty or we don't roll out or somebody has to pay, something, a fine, whatever. So start with that. What is our SLO? What is our standard going to be? And then third, start looking at performance budgets. And by budgets, I don't mean financial budgets. I mean, for example, when you have a web page, how big should that web page be in size? How much information should be in there? There's only so many calls that you can make before this web page gets out of control. It gets too big, and I always talk about it as like a pie. It becomes a hot mess after you put too much stuff into the pie because it begins to overflow. So think about how you can restrict and get what you need to present to the user in as little as possible and not go over certain thresholds of budget. How big should files be? How many calls should be made, etc. Then include performance criteria into the definition of done. We talked about that in the slide before. That's probably one of the biggest things you can do. And as you begin to see the results, just like we saw on the first slide with WPO stats, confirm what the cost or the savings or the ROI was when you meet these performance issues head on and you fix them. There's definitely some kind of a metric that you can use to say, we've done something, we moved the rock forward, and we've got this benefit out of it. And select somebody to be the champion over this and go out there and tell everybody, this is what we've done with this. This is how this has saved us. Because nothing will continue your success like a success. Once you get one win, people will be beating down your door to get more of this. In one organization I started with, they were doing no performance testing, and by the time we were done, they wanted to test everything, including birthday announcement web pages and things we didn't even have time for, because everybody likes it when things are fast. And they want it to work. They want it right now, but they want it right now. So this is at least a few things that I can recommend from my experience I've seen that I think will help you climb this hill as you build in this performance culture. So that's my spiel today, but I'm looking forward to your questions. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Scott. Well done. I'll keep it on this slide while we collect some questions. The one thing I wanted to highlight, there are actually 2 comments that I had based on some of our work together. One, as we've gone through these programs, we've for years have talked about doing the QA work and then also the non-functional testing, and the concept here that performance testing or some of the other work is part of the non-functional requirements. And I think sometimes what gets lost in that is there's still requirements. And the way that the focus of a performance engineering culture, or just a focus on it, period, allows us to rethink that this is still a requirement that needs to be part of the story of the use case, and is part of the definition of done, as you said. So tying that to a budget as a requirement, but not relegating it to a testing activity that gets done after we've determined that it's functionally sound. And the second comment, which is more of a fun comment, but that I've heard you talk through, certainly around the budgets, but is essentially, as we've worked with developers or the engineering organization, we often see that the horsepower of the systems that these projects and these programs are being designed on is far superior to that, let's say, of a standard environment, or one that can potentially hide. And obviously, as we talk about cloud migrations and elasticity within those cloud deployments, those can hide some of these issues. And so when we look at what does it make sense for the non-functional requirement or the budget to look like, I think we talk about, can it run on a Raspberry Pi? Can it run on a small system to the level of the performance budget that you've set? That allows us to really understand, is this meeting that requirement? And I think, as we said at the very beginning, there's significant cost savings. There's potential cost savings as part of that. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Scott.
No, when you've got a developer who's got 16 gigs of RAM and quadrillion, gigs of hard drive space, and they're working on the latest, greatest, whatever, they're not thinking in terms of once I roll this out, how does that affect the amount of infrastructure I'm going to use, and then how does that affect the end user? And that's what I think is the biggest missing piece, is that the people on the technical side that develop the software and even test the software and even monitor what's going on are not thinking in terms of, who is that person behind the screen using it? What is going to be their experience? And that needs to be the first concern. So if you build it for something that's way smaller, you can always get more out of it. It's about efficiency.
Great. Thank you, Scott. I have one question. I'll go ahead, and while we address that question, if anyone else has other questions, you can add it into the chat, and we'll address them as they come in. Scott, the first question, and maybe we can expand on this to a more broader concept, but is around performance testing in production. How, can it be done regularly? Are there examples where of it being done, or whether that's a good thing, bad thing, et cetera?
Well, there are plenty of people who are doing performance testing in production. Sometimes they have a different instance that runs on the same infrastructure. It's a different code base, and sometimes it points to a different database that's kind of munged up depending on the situation. Anything that has to do with making money, or if this particular function goes down, we all get fired, those are probably being done today. I will tell you a great example that doesn't even use an automated load testing tool, and that's Amazon.com. And they're going to be doing a load test in October. It's called Prime Day. That's how they get ready for Black Friday. And guess who they use to do their load testing? You. So that's a perfect example of doing some performance testing in production to make sure they're ready for the big show later on.
I was going to say the same thing, right? Many organizations are doing performance testing in production, whether it's by design or not, and they're getting that load. And certainly that's a very reactive mechanism versus being proactive and trying to accompany it. Great. Thank you, Scott. While we're waiting for any questions to come in, Vicki, I don't know if you need to do anything to make sure that our friends from the Weber Grill Academy are ready to go, but please do that and let me know if I need to do anything on this side.
Sure, they are on, and if you'd like, I can have them start. Jennifer?
I will. Let's leave it. I'll give the floor one more minute to see if there's any other questions or comments that anyone would like to ask Scott.
Hey, Brian.
Go ahead, Sunil.
Yeah. So basically, one more example of live in production load testing. I don't know if anybody here is a T-Mobile customer or not, like me, but they have these card drops that happen invariably from vendors like Panera or whatever, and they have very specific times. It's a first come, first serve. So that's another example I just wanted to bring up that happens as an in production load test scenario. Because what I've witnessed many times is the minute the time window starts, if you try to get in there, the very first person to try to basically claim their gift card giveaway or whatever, you might be lucky. But after maybe the first 5 to 10 seconds, you will notice their system crashes.
Thanks, Sunil. Well said. Scott, we had 2 more questions come in as well. And then Vicky will turn it over to Weber. So I think, Scott, the first one, talking about a little bit more about ownership in detail. Who owns? I'll interpret this. Thank you, Richard, for your question. I'll interpret it to say who owns the training, the development, the environment, and so forth as part of performance engineering. If we are in fact going outside of the, maybe the traditional performance testing ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every organization, but I'll mention 2. If you were doing SAFe or scaled agile, right, there's a system team, and there would be someone in that system team who would be responsible at a larger level. What is the standard that we're going to go by? What are we going to do in terms of how long is too long? How are we going to monitor this on an ongoing basis? And how do we know when things need to be escalated? That person would probably work with the group in the DevOps world, the operations side, and there would be this collaboration going on. But ownership would probably happen there. Whereas if you were in a Spotify model or maybe in a typical Scrum team model, that Scrum team might be responsible for their level of ownership might just be what code they're responsible for deploying. That application might be made up of a bunch of different microservices. Maybe they're only developing that one, and they have to make sure that it meets a certain level. I'll keep going back to Google Rail, where we say, okay, well, our API calls need to be within 100 milliseconds, or we need to be able to explain why. But the organization has to decide that as a whole. But they might only be responsible for that API, and then maybe that system team or the equivalent of that, when they do more of an integrated test, would look at the entire rendered page, and they would make sure that there's not so many 100 millisecond page timings that breach 5 seconds for the whole thing.
Thank you, Scott. I think we have time for at least this one final question, and if we can sneak another one in, if anyone has one, go ahead and put it in the chat. But the last question was talking about budgets. Srinivas, thank you for the question. I'm assuming he's talking about financial budgets here, although we spent some time talking about performance budget in a non-financial sense. Certainly that opens up a big can of worms, Scott. If you want to talk a little bit more about what you think performance budgets in terms of, thank you, Srinivas, in terms of effort. I'm not sure if you want to get into that now, because obviously it's different for every company.
Well, I mean, if we're not talking about financial, if you want to just talk about it as like a standard across the board in terms of how long should something be, how big should something be, I'm going to share a link here. And this is from web.dev that talks about performance budgets 101, and it kind of tells you what to look for. Start there. There's several, just look up performance budgets and speed on Google. You're going to see a lot of different pages. There's even calculators out there that say, okay, if you want to be within this number of seconds and you're on a 4G LTE, how you slide back and forth between how much you can pass across the wire, how much bandwidth you have, how large your page size should be, and be able to limit that. So hopefully that helps.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Scott. And again, thanks everybody for joining. I do appreciate the questions and the attention. We'll try to get everybody at least, I don't know if you're eating or if this is during your lunch hour, but we'll certainly get ready to turn it over here to Weber Grill Academy. And again, thank you, Micro Focus and Arrow, for bringing the Weber Grill team to this webinar. Vicky, do you want to go ahead and introduce our next guest then?
Yep, definitely. I'm just trying to get them on. Just give me 1 second. If If you have another question you'd like to answer, I'm just waiting for them. I did give them a time, and I think we ended a little earlier. That's why they're.
I'm so good at my time. That's what it is. Right? So I know that. Oh well, I see that you're ready. I can answer something, or you can go forward.
Okay. Here they come.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, everybody watching. Woo, I want to thank Arrow and Vicky for organizing this wonderful grill along demonstration, we'll call it, for all of you to enjoy. All right. I know we are in October. I know that this weekend is going to be here in Canada, our Thanksgiving. But you know what never goes out of style is a wicked steak hot off the grill. And that's what we're going to be preparing here today. Plus, we're going to be making what we call a board sauce. Yeah, there's nothing boring about it. We're going to be what a joke, eh, Jen? We're doing a board sauce. We're going to compose a sauce on the cutting board that we cut up our steak on. So how about that? We're going to get into the actual cut of meat in a moment. First things first, whenever we're grilling, whether it be in your backyard or here at the Weber Grill Academy, where we opened our doors back in 2014 and have empowered so many backyard heroes over the years, we must do the preheat to our grill. And we have our charcoal kettle here today. Yeah, invented in 1952, this kettle has, shall we say, caught the world on fire. Whoa, another one. And so now, with our chimney loaded up with briquettes of charcoal, I like briquettes because I got a uniform cook, a consistent cook. What with the differences of the shapes and sizes of lump charcoal, I find that though it's a good flavor, it's a fluctuation in heat. So we're using Weber briquettes in the chimney, and now with gloves on, because things get hot in the kitchen, we're going to lift up our chimney and give it a shake. I call it the shake rattle, and now we're going to disperse, and we're going to set it up in a 2-zone fire. Yeah, ooh, with the sparks. We're going to set this down. The hot chimney should never be put onto a wood deck unless you want Olympic rings burned in there forever, and never on your lawn unless you like alien crop circles fused into your lawn. We're going to reach for our charcoal rake. If the kettle was invented in 1952, anybody want to guess? Get your fingers typing. What year was our charcoal rake invented? Yeah, we want to know. With this rake, we're going to push the charcoal briquettes to one side, creating sort of like a yin-yang. I want to even out this mattress of charcoal. I want consistent heat so I do not peaks and valleys in my charcoal bed. All right, that looks pretty good. So with this, we're going to put our rake back down and we're going to reach for this, wood chips. Woo! Wood chips that have been soaked for at least 30 minutes. These are hickory in flavor. And with the drained water, they now are moist and ready to go to our bed of charcoal. And by the way, don't overdo it. Just a little smattering, a little handful of these wood chips, just strewn about the mattress of hot coals is good enough. From here, we're going to reach for our cooking grate. Yeah, it's got a hole in the middle. That's because sometimes I'll put a wok there. Today, wow, we will simply reach for the other ring. I have it right here. Yes, I do. Yes, this is good times. Yes. Any questions so far on how we're doing today? All right, this is our ring. We're going to place it in the middle. And then we never underestimate the importance of a proper preheat. We recommend at least 10 minutes, lid down and dampers open, vents open, allowing air to travel into this wonderful bobber-shaped grill. It was inspired from buoy, and we like that because it promotes natural convection, the air swirling in and around our grill. We want to make sure the damper on the bottom's open, and that's what we have. And look at white smoke. That's the kind of smoke we want. Black smoke would mean something's burning. Get to it, extinguish it. The white smoke, well, the Pope likes the white smoke, so we do too. All right, now it's time to talk about the beef, and I'm bringing it in right now. Check it out. It's a ribeye, bone-in ribeye. Now, if it were a bone-out ribeye, that would be fine. But with the bone-in ribeye, well, now there's something magical about the flavor that comes with cooking with the bone on. And I gotta say, I like to chew on that bone after I'm done eating the steak. And the fact is, this steak needs to be seasoned with a little bit of oil, salt, and pepper. We're gonna add the oil to the ribeye, though it is heavily marbled with all the fat riddled throughout this beef. It is a super flavorful and moist cut, but we do need to just add a little bit of oil for the surface for our seasoning to stick to it, all right? As well as the oil promotes a nice grill mark, all right? So with this, we use salt and pepper around here, but you're welcome to use your fantastic rub concoctions that you might have at home. That is all up to you. I'm reaching for a little pepper and we sprinkle it on. And I sprinkle it on a little bit high above because I don't want dense pockets of seasoning in any one place on my steak. We're gonna flip it over and then we're gonna hit it with a little more of the oil. And again, a lot of rendering of fat happens when we go to grill this wonderful ribeye, but we do need just a little bit of oil to start it off. Salt, yes, a little bit more. And pepper. And then we're gonna roll the fat cap of our wonderful steak so it also gets seasoned, all right? Lovely. How long did I pull this out of the fridge before we take it to the grill? Would you believe if I told you at least 30 to 40 minutes before? You need it to come up sort of room temperature, like an ambient temperature, before you take it to the grill. Otherwise, if you're looking for a medium rare doneness, which is 135 degrees Fahrenheit internally, you're going to be struggling to get there because of the cold center of your steak cut. All right, so do take note of that. Oh yeah, and how about this? After the preheat's done, it's usually a good time to take a grill brush and give a good little brushing. We did that earlier with the grill grate, but do take it as an opportunity with all the heat, kind of brings up the bits. And where are you watching from? I gotta know. Are you in the West Coast, East Coast, far north of Canada? What's going on? Southwestern Ontario? What's going on? Jen, do we have a question? Lovely. So yes, though we were born from the love of charcoal grilling, and what were you going to add to that, Jen? How would we do this on a gas cart grill? Simply put, we would lift our lid to our gas grill, making sure the fuel is plugged in, whether it be natural gas or liquid propane. And then from there, with this particular unit, the igniter is built into the actual knob. So, for example, I'll turn this on by clicking, and it is now on. At home, you might have an igniter button, so we recommend that you go left to right, turning one burner on at a time. Do not turn all your burners on and then hit the igniter. And always turn on your grill with the lid open. We do not want gases trapping up in your cook box. So yeah, good question. Who asked that question? Do we know? You did, Jen. All right. Comment. So we got some responses. Yes. We got Lydia from Ottawa. Lydia. Carl from Toronto. Yes. Rusty from Idaho. Rusty from Idaho. Potato 10. Carlin says in the dry heat, but I don't know. I'm going to say Arizona. Maybe. All right. Having said all of that, look at this. We still have that white wispy smoke coming from our grill over here. So we want to now come on over. Our temperature on the grill, whether it be gas or charcoal, we want it to be north of 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And we have achieved that here. From this point now, with my clean cooking grate, we're going to take that wonderful bone-in ribeye. Just look at that. It's something Fred Flintstone would have been very, very happy and proud of. We're going to place it down onto the grill, pressing it just lightly into the cooking grate to ensure contact. And then we are going to close the lid, cheating that damper, the vent, over top of the steak, because now that smoky air has to escape, travel over that ribeye to do so. All right, so with this, we're going to reach for our timer. And the timer will say 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and then we're going to give it a look-see and possibly flip it, all right? And giving it another 3 minutes and 30 seconds to reach our 135 degree Fahrenheit internal doneness. So yeah, how about that? Boom. Very good. Now, everybody, come on down over to Sauce Land, because what is happening here is something fantastic. Whether you decide to marinate your steak, some people do that with wine and shallots and herbs. I tend not to, because I always want that beef flavor to be pronounced. I want it to be the star of the show. But I will, from time to time, make sauces to accompany the steak. So whether it be a green peppercorn and brandy sauce, or today, a board sauce. Have you ever used your cutting board as a, what's the word I'm looking for? A canvas to paint a sauce over? Well, we're going to do that with this cutting board right now. What we have are some simple ingredients. How about shallots? If you don't have shallots, you can always use a red onion. Jen and I were talking about it. Jen on camera right now. We were talking about it earlier. What would you use? How about a red onion, a white onion? Heck, a green onion, but you want some sort of onion note. With this, we're just going to start creating a pile in the center of our cutting board. Oh yeah, there are shallots. And then from here, we have capers. All right, capers. Salty, briny. If you don't have a caper, how about finely dice up a dill pickle? That would be nice. And if you really want to get crazy, you could also rip out some salty anchovies and mince those up. Believe it or not, the steak and the anchovy is a nice little match made in heaven. From here, we're going to take our capers and just pour them over top of the onion pile. And then here, we've got garlic. Let's get it in. Garlic. And a little bit of seedy, grainy mustard and a little bit of Dijon creamy mustard. Okay, so just a nice whack of both of those flavors go in. And we're not even done. How about your favorite herbs? Rosemary, thyme are some of my favorite herbs. We're going to get some herbs in here. From here, we also have some thyme. Yeah, get it in there. And then lime juice or lemon juice. We want some acidity to get into this. So we're going to just take our lime and we're going to just juice it over top of our capers, our onions, our mustard, and herbs. And if you thought we were done, we're not done. We're going to hit it now with a drizzle of balsamic. Nice hearty drizzle. And then some olive oil. A couple lugs of the olive oil. And then in a moment, we're going to take a knife and we're just going to mash it up together. And then when our steak is finished grilling, we're going to be laying the steak over top of our sauce, tenting it for the juices to drip into the sauce, and then we're going to serve it. Sound good? Now, any questions? We want to hear them. Any comments? We want to see them. Get those fingers typing. We now know where you are. Where we are is in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, north of the city by about a half an hour. Vaughan is where we are located, and we used to teach these kind of items in class, in person, to people like yourselves. But we're dealing with a thing called the pandemic, and when we crush it to the ground, we're going to open up these doors, and we hope to see all of you for one of these grill-tastic classes. Yes! Okay, temperature on the grill is steady. Over here, I'm going to be bringing in, ooh, check this out, Jen. I've got a little side dish. We're going to be complementing today's feast with a Hasselbeck sweet potato. And I love the Hasselbeck sweet potato, what with all the many, many incisions into this. Saved by the bell. We're going to hit this. We're going to go over to the grill with our grill gloves on. You have to imagine that we are all about safety grilling here at the Weber Grill Academy. So the gloves go on and they're insulated. And we're going to go to our charcoal grill. Smoky notes. We grab our tongs and we're going to simply grab hold of that ribeye and place it to a new part of the cooking grate. Close the lid, because why do we close the lid? Why? To trap in flavors, aromas. Don't elongate your cook time. And simply put, looking isn't cooking. Put a lid on it, all right? Jen, question. Yes. Ooh, so Lydia, what grill would I recommend for a small balcony? First, the question is, does your balcony allow a gas grill of any kind? Do you have a natural gas outlet? Some balconies do. A lot of balconies and buildings don't allow you to travel up and down the elevator with a liquid propane tank. So most commonly, what I see are electric grills. No gas? Then you're going to be looking for a Weber electric grill. Q-Line has some, and one day we might have a little thing called Weber Pulse, but that's our secret, okay? Electric grills up your alley. Any other questions?
Tim says he sous vide steaks. Do you recommend searing the steak before or after you put the steak in a precision cooker?
Great question. What was his name?
So he sous vide the steak.
What's his name?
Sorry, Tim.
Tim! So you like to sous vide your steak, and that's great. A lot of people love to sous vide their steak. What we do here at the Grill Academy from time to time, we'll do a reverse sear steak. So we will start at a low temp, indirect, away from where the flames are, and we'll just bake our steak. And then at the end, we'll crank up all the burners and take the steak to the high temperature. It's sort of like sous vide, maybe as moist as sous vide, what being in that bag submerged in the liquid. So yeah, we do it. We call it reverse sear in this part of the land, though. Nice one, Ian.
If we was continue to use sous vide, should you
after. 100% after you put it in the bag, not seared. Okay, you sear it at the end. All right, good question. Another one?
Lana's asking for the recipes on the website. Nikki will be sending them out, but you can find more on the website.
All right, so Lana was the name of Jack Tripper from Three's Company's love interest. I'm pretty sure that's what that was. So Lana, these recipes are going to be distributed from Vicky when we are concluding this session. But yeah, please go to our website, webergrillacademy.ca or weber.com. Lots of recipes, tips, and tricks, and when our next classes might be. Love you, Lana. Any other questions? No? All right. How about this? Let's go check on our steak. If we wanted to get diamond cross-hatch grill marks like Ponderosa, it would be now that we'd want to do a quick rotation, and we'd go from 10 to 2 to get that. All right, so let's give it a rotation, flipping to a new part of the grate, flame broiled action, and we're going to get our thermometer ready because we can have a timer all we want, and that gives us a nice sort of baseline to go off of. We need a thermometer to tell us what's going on inside of the steak. And so I'm using right now today an instant read thermometer to get the job done. We'll turn it on, and we're going to be going over and plunging it into the center of our steak to get an answer on what's going on in there. Question, Jen?
I have a question for you. Did you leave your bone in or not?
Oh, we left the bone in for the flavor, the rich flavor. Your recipe may be a bone out, but that's okay. If you go to your butcher and you see them, maybe there's a good deal that day on your bone-in ribeyes. It happens. Go for the bone-in ribeye. You might just be adding an extra minute and a half to your cook time, all right? But the flavor is second to none. And so we're going to lift up our lid. Look at this. Plunge our thermometer into the center, and we are getting a reading, which is divine. It's ready to go. At 125, it's going to carry up to the temp. I'm going to leave the lid open just for a moment because I want to take our spoon. Check this out, Jen. We're going to just mash the shallots, the vinegar, the olive oil, the mustard, all of it. Heck, you know what? We work with Damien here in the Grill Academy. From time to time, he'll take a big old chef's blade and just give it encouragement with that. Yeah, just chop it up. And our steak is going to ever so nicely live over top of our board sauce, taking in the flavor, at the same time the beef drippings commingling with all of this salty goodness. Yeah, let's bring it over. All right, got a plate right here. We've got our steak. Look at this lovely little guy. Oh, the beauty of a grilled ribeye over charcoal is this red color, which is also flavor. That reddish tinge is the smoky notes captured on our meat. And so from here, we're going to take this like so, placing it over top. And just, you know, we were talking about it earlier. I've got a little bit of compound butter right here. So it may look like a bonbon for Halloween, but inside here is a little bit of butter mixed with salt, pepper, fresh herbs. I could take a knife, and with this, we could cut a coin of this butter, just like so, for the decadence. Peel the paper away, and then just over top, yeah, maybe just slice it a little bit, mix it around, and then get the foil over top. We're tenting for just a couple moments here to let that butter melt and for the juices in our steak to redistribute themselves where they originally came from. If we were to cut into the steak too soon, what we would be left with is too much of the juice from inside the steak onto the cutting board or your plate, all right? And we're here to eat the steak, not drink the juice. Question?
Tim is asking, you tried a picanha for the first time.
Love a good picanha.
Do you trim the fat of the steak before you put the steak on the grill? How do you prevent a fire alarm fire from picanha?
And what was his name?
Tim.
Tim. So we do picanha around here quite a bit. In fact, the general manager of Weber, that's his favorite cut. And so with that being a triangular cut towards the rump and being a very fatty cap to it, what we do is we score it, all right? We score it like we would, say, a duck breast, where we want to expose, get a lot of surface area happening with that fat. And then from there, we'll season it with salt, pepper, garlic, and even a coffee rub, and we'll put that over top. Then, to prevent the 5-alarm fire that sometimes can happen with such a fatty cut of beef, we start it indirect, sort of like that reverse sear that I believe it was Tim that we were talking to about that. We would do a reverse sear with our picanha, and at the end, over direct heat, hit it with all that flaming action. And you'll keep an eye on it at that point and probably keep the lid open just to have at it. All right. So I love the picanha. It's always about cutting against the grain. And if you've ever been to a Brazilian steakhouse, the picanha, well, that is the desired beef cut that they go around the room with the spits and they cut it table side. Yeah, picanha. Love it. Next question. Is there one? Ask me a question.
I have a question. I'd like to jump in here, Michael. I like to do the draw.
Yeah.
Why don't I turn my camera on here and show you guys? I have my Halloween bowl in keeping with the Halloween theme.
We have a giveaway, everybody.
We're going to give away
Wow.
the charcoal grill that's right behind Michael, a version of that. Oops. And I also have the chimney that Michael used for the charcoal. So I'll be shipping that out to a lucky winner. Here's my bowl. Got the names of everybody that was on in our meeting, and let's see what it is. I have a Nick Pappas. Nick? Nick, is Nick on the call still? I hope so. Yes. Yes.
He won the actual grill.
Nick is here. Congratulations, Nick.
Thank you.
I'm going to send you. I've got your email, and I'll send you.
Let me know when we're back.
Send me your address. I will ship this prize out to you tomorrow. All right. Congratulations, and to everyone else, I will be emailing everyone a copy of this recipe from today, as well as the URL for the replay of the presentation.
And Vicky, I know some folks are going to start dropping here at the end of the hour, but those who want to stay on can certainly stay on. And congratulations to Nick. And I just, on behalf of Arrow, Micro Focus, and QA Consultants, myself, and Scott Moore, thank you all for joining.
Definitely. Thank you all. And please fill out your survey that will be getting emailed shortly after.
Are we on?
Back over to you all. Yep.
Yeah,
Are we?
You can keep going. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Woo!
So we have a
Congratulations to Nick. I think you're going to love that grill. I have never looked back. That smoky aroma infused on your food, you're going to love it. Any questions?
Who's going to eat the steak?
Okay, thank you. We're going to carve it up because it's time for the carvery. We're going to do that. And so all I do is I grab hold of it where the bone is right here. I can feel that bone. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to run it along the edge of the bone. Oh, look at this. And this bone, we're going to keep just here off to the side for the time being, because what we want to do here with the steak is start cutting it just on the bias, thickish slices, slightly on an angle. The juices, the drippings are going into the sauce on the board. This is a shareable ribeye meant for passing around to that special somebody in your life. And this is my favorite part at the end, that cap, the spinalis muscle right here, right there. With this bone, you can always place it back to where it originally came from for a presentation factor. And this becomes, with our Hasselbeck off to the side. Oh, and look at this. I've got some roughage coming from Rapini. We're going to get this on. And I want to thank everybody for watching this today. I hope we've empowered you, or at least inspired you, to get into your backyard this weekend. Temperatures look pretty good over here in the GTA, and maybe try out this recipe. Try it out for your friends and family, and of course, be safe while doing so. Everybody, my name is Michael P. Clive. You can find us on Weber Grill CA, Facebook, Instagram. There's always something going on there. Keep a grill on, and if there are any other questions, are there? We've got a question. Wow, I like to put it on a spit and rotisserate it. That's what I like to do, sprinkle cinnamon sugar on it, maybe baste it with honey once in a while. Outside of that, maybe I'll do like a bananas Foster flambe with caramel, put pineapple spears in that. Lydia, good question. Anybody else? Everybody keep your grill on and enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend if you are in Canada.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you to everyone for attending.
I'd be remiss if I didn't try before all of you. Yeah! Yeah! Pow, pow! Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. We are the Weber Grill Academy. Thank you, Jen, on camera.
Thank you
you,
all.
Vicki.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. That was great. Thanks to everyone for attending as well. And stay tuned for your recipes. That concludes our presentation for today. You can all disconnect now and have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Bye-bye.